Hartenbos is where South Africans come to exhale, to queue at the ice cream stand, to walk barefoot on the sand, to feel, if only for a moment, that the world is still safe. But sometimes even paradise forgets to lock its doors. In May 2018, a quiet home near the beach turned into a crime scene, a marriage worn thin by years of silence and tension ended with a knife to the chest. Years later, under the golden lights of the seafront's spur, armed men shattered the peace in a place built for families and birthday songs. Two very different kinds of violence, two moments that left scars beneath the sunscreen and souvenir shops. This isn't the Hartenbos you'll find on postcards. This is the one where blood stains more than just the sand. This is Brick and Blood, South African Town Tales. Hartenbos is a place where silence is golden. The town sleeps in mid-autumn with its windows shut tight, its streets brushed clean by the salt wind. Behind the high garden walls and face brick homes, life settles into routine. But in one of these quiet streets, in May 2018, a sudden rupture broke the stillness. A knife, a husband, a wife. It happened in the early hours, the kind of hour where street lights buzz and dawn hasn't yet stirred. A 65-year-old woman placed a call to the police. She said she had stabbed her husband. One wound, straight to the chest. He was 67. The home sat in a modest part of Hartenbos. Here, life is methodical. Routines are gentle. Most houses are one story, built in the 1980s or early 1990s. Tiled roofs, white window frames, two-car garages, and quiet neighbors. It was one of these homes that the fatal argument unfolded. Police reports confirmed that the woman and her husband had quarreled earlier that night. What they argued about, only she would know. What the woman told the police was that she feared for her life, that the argument turned physical, that he had shoved her against a cabinet. The kitchen was the nearest space, the knife the nearest weapon. It was quick, a decision made in anger or in fear, or perhaps both. By the time help arrived, it was too late. That room with its neutral tiles and tidy curtains became his final resting place. Not a hospital, not a hospice, a lounge chair in his own home, under the ceiling fan they'd likely installed together. The place they'd retired to had quietly become the place where it all ended. 2 days later, the woman appeared in the Mossel Bay Magistrates Court. She wore a pale blue jacket, her white hair pulled into a bun. She looked down as the magistrate read the charge. Murder. No family came forward to speak. No crowd gathered. It was not a public scandal. It was a quiet case, like the street it came from. Her name was not released in the initial police press statements. In small towns, discretion still matters. By winter, the house was quiet again. The police tape had come down. The neighbors had shifted their attention. Life resumed, but That house, the one with the grey gate and rose bush by the window, it stayed on the market for months. No one wanted to move in. In places like Hartenbos, memory clings to space. People don't forget which house held which tragedy. They remember who lived there, who died there, even after the curtains change and the walls are repainted. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening in Hartenbos. The seafront complex was alive with its usual soundtrack, the hum of foot traffic, the scrape of sandals, the murmur of families deciding between soft serve and sushi. Tourists wandered lazily between fish vendors and beachwear shops, watching the sun turn the sky apricot through the glass-paneled corridors. At the center of it all, the familiar neon red of the Spur Steak Ranch sign, glowing against the warm cladding of the Hartenbos seafront. Inside the Spur, things felt safe, predictable, laminated menus, shiny tables, waiters weaving between booths, children playing on the jungle gym, the smell of grilled ribs and onion rings drifting out of the open kitchen. It was the kind of restaurant that built on memory, where people ordered the same burger they'd been eating since they were kids. But at 9:15 p.m. on the night of September 14, 2022, that illusion shattered. Two armed men walked in, not shouting, not stumbling, just walking like any other late night customer. But the first sign of something wrong wasn't the guns, it was the silence that followed their entrance, a hush that spread like a virus, as if the air itself had stiffened. A child stopped chewing. A waitress hesitated at the till. Then came the command, all of you, hands where I can see them. They moved with cold precision. One suspect leapt over the counter and pointed a firearm at the staff. The other began moving through the dining area, weapon raised, shouting for patrons to lie down, give up their phones, wallets, anything of value. Parents shielded their children under tables. A pensioner clutched her handbag like it was her final possession. In the kitchen, a cook froze, hand still wrapped around a spatula. Security at the seafront complex was caught off guard. It was Hartenbos, after all, not Johannesburg. But that night, the line between it can't happen here and it just did was gone in seconds. Some victims reported being hit or threatened. A few tried to hide their valuables beneath chairs or under their arms, hoping the robbers wouldn't notice. The restaurant's CCTV footage later showed the men moving quickly but calmly. This wasn't spontaneous. They had scoped the place. They knew where the security blind spots were. They knew that by this time of night, foot traffic outside would be light and backup slow. What they didn't expect was a disruption. As they were exiting, a security guard from the seafront complex, responding to a silent alarm, confronted the suspects at the mall's entrance. A tense standoff followed. One of the gunmen fired, luckily, a warning shot, the sound splitting through the night, bouncing off the high facades of the adjacent storefronts. They escaped running towards the parking lot, and disappeared into the darkness between the parked bakkies and palm trees. Police launched a manhunt, setting up roadblocks between Hartenbos and Voorbaai. In the days that followed, two suspects were arrested, both believed to be part of a larger syndicate operating along the garden route. One was reportedly found with stolen items that were linked to the Spur robbery. Investigations also confirmed they had targeted other establishments in the region in previous months. No lives were lost that night, thank goodness, but something else was taken. For the families sitting at those tables, for the waiters who dropped to the floor, for the kids who stopped climbing halfway up the jungle gym, a layer of safety peeled away, the kind that can't be restored with better locks or brighter lights. The Hartenbos seafront complex has been built for leisure. Its clean, modern lines and timber accents were designed to echo the charm of the coast. Relaxed, inviting, controlled. Its open plan layout gave a sense of transparency, of comfort. Large glass panels let in the sea air while timber screens cast delicate shadows over the wide pedestrian walkways. But that openness had its flaws. The town itself, it kept moving, of course. By the next weekend, the seafront was full again. The same smell of frying chips, the same laughter echoing from the splash pad. But in the quiet spaces between bites, there was something else now, an unease that no meal could mask, because Hartenbos is the kind of place where people return year after year, and now one of those years will always be remembered for the wrong reason. At first glance, the two crimes we've explored seem worlds apart. One, an act of sudden, intimate violence behind closed doors. The other, a calculated public robbery carried out under fluorescent lights whilst families were eating dinner. But both took place in Hartenbos, a town so synonymous with safety, so bound up in nostalgia, that the very idea of violent crime feels like a betrayal. And that's exactly why they matter. The illusion of safety and who it fails. In May 2018, a woman allegedly stabbed her husband during an argument inside their own home. Not an outsider, not a shadowy stranger, but a partner behind walls that were supposed to shield and shelter. Domestic violence is often invisible in places like Hartenbos, hidden beneath manicured gardens and polite Sunday greetings. But as Dr. D. Smythe, professor of public law at UCT, writes in her study on gender violence in South Africa, quote, domestic spaces are the most dangerous for women precisely because they are private. Architecture protects, but it also conceals, end quote. What does it mean when a seaside retirement town becomes the setting for something this brutal? It forces us to reckon with the reality that crime doesn't only happen in high-risk areas. It happens in the good suburbs, in the cul-de-sacs with ocean views, in neat little houses with curtains where no one hears the final argument. Then 4 years later, the Spur armed robbery stripped away another layer of safety, this time in full view. The Hartenbos seafront complex had been designed for comfort and openness. Its airy architecture, its central courtyard, and transparent facades were meant to make shoppers feel welcome. But as urban sociologist Dr. Caroline Skinner warns, quote, design that prioritizes aesthetic openness over controlled access can inadvertently make commercial centers soft targets, particularly when security is assumed rather than actively maintained, end quote. The architecture didn't cause the robbery, but it shaped how the crime unfolded, how quickly the suspects could enter, how exposed patrons became, and how vulnerable staff felt once it was all over. Hartenbos has always symbolized something bigger, generational memory, middle class retreat, the illusion of timeless calm. But as journalist Greg Nicholson once wrote of crime in quieter towns, quote, when violence happens in places we think of as safe, it punctures our sense of order. It reminds us that class and geography are not barriers to blood, end quote. And when that safety is punctured in your home or during dinner at your favorite restaurant, the ripple effects are hard to measure. Architecture doesn't just house us, it shapes us. The homes in Hartenbos are more than just structures. The Spur is more than just a place to eat. They are symbols of routine, of comfort, of collective trust. When violence enters those symbols, it does more than just physical harm. It completely disorients. It exposes cracks in the stories we tell ourselves about where we live and who we are. So, why do these stories matter? Because they remind us that no space is neutral, because they ask what it means to feel safe in a place that still echoes with unspoken violence. Because architecture isn't just about buildings, it's about the stories that live inside them. And sometimes those stories bleed. Hartenbos is a place of rituals, of beach walks, braais, and family holidays. But even the most familiar streets can carry shadows. Behind closed doors and under bright restaurant lights, 2 acts of violence shattered the illusion of safety, reminding us that no place is too peaceful, no building too beloved to keep darkness out. These aren't just crimes, they are stories about the limits of architecture, the silence of communities, and the weight of what we don't say. If this episode made you pause, if you saw your own street, your own family in these stories, please share it. Subscribe to Brick and Blood wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating, drop a comment. I would love to know what you think of it so that I can evolve and grow. And follow me on YouTube. Every listen helps me keep unearthing the untold. And remember, every town has a face it shows and a truth it hides. Until next time, walk softly, listen deeply, and never forget, every wall has a story.